welcome to Ignatian Pathways, a podcast from OIS gathering voices from the Ignatian family and sharing the many, many ways to God we have discovered through Ignatian spirituality. As always, I'm Dr. Dave Del Fuente, Associate Director for Ignatian Young Adult Ministries. Today's episode is another one from last year's Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice, and our guests are Clarissa Aljentera, Director of Education for Justice, Ignatian Solidarity Network; Michael Libunao-Macalintal, Director of Campus Ministry, Regis High School; and Jeffrey Echenique Wallace, Director of Spirituality and Justice, Gwynedd Mercy University. Oh boy, I've got friends from all sorts of connections, and that's part of the beauty of the Ignatian family. So I'm going to go around the horn and invite folks to give a quick introduction. To my left is Jeff Echenique Wallace.
Hey, yes, my name is Jeffrey Miguel Echenique Wallace, he, him pronouns. I'm currently the Director of Spirituality and Justice at Gwynedd Mercy University outside of Philadelphia, outside of Northeast Philadelphia and the Gwynedd Valley, a suburb of Philadelphia. I'm also a program coordinator for the Synodal Fellows program. That's part of an organization or a collaborative we call Synodality in Catholic Higher Education in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. I've been a ministry professional in higher ed for about 10 years now. Worked a little bit in the nonprofit sphere with Catholic Relief Services. And I've been at the Teach-In for, I feel like, a good part of my young adult to adult life. So I'm happy to be here, happy to be asked by Dave to be part of this. So thank you.
Once upon a time, we were young grad students at the Boston College School of Theology and Ministry. And now here we are. This is great.
No guitars this time.
Yeah. Now, diagonal into Jeff's left is Mike Libunao. How do we say your last name?
Libunao-Macalintal.
Macalintal.
Yeah.
It's, every time I meet a Macalintal, it's different. So I second guess myself.
I think that's fair. I think the amount of comparisons or asked if I'm related to a different Macalintal is 8 out of 10 times inaccurate. But the 2 times that it is accurate, it is great.
Great.
So I'm Mike Libunao-Macalintal, he, him pronouns. I'm currently the Director of Campus Ministry at Regis High School, which is an all-boys Jesuit Catholic high school on the Upper East Side in New York City. Before that, I spent the last few years working with seminarians across a wide variety of Christian traditions. But I've been in ministry for, I suppose, close to a decade now, which has been pretty rad. Happy to be here. Happy to be in community with these good folks. Yeah. This is maybe my 4th teach-in. Just really grateful to be in y'all's presence.
And where'd you go to undergrad, Mike?
I went to the Jesuit University of New York, Fordham University, Lincoln Center.
There we go. There it is. 2015. Yeah. And we just missed each other, I think, by a year or so, because I graduated 2010. So 2 years, I guess. 2013 was the freshman year class when I was a senior. Mm-hmm. But we know people. We both know each other by other people that we know.
That's basically. Right. Yeah.
So it's wild. Now, to Mike's left and also diagonal to me is Clarissa Aljentera of the Ignatian Solidarity Network. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. My name is Clarissa Aljentera. I am the Director of Education for Justice with Ignatian Solidarity Network, and I've been there for 3 years now, and just kind of grateful to be in that space. Outside of that, I'm on the first year of doctoral studies at University of San Francisco, getting my Doctorate of Education in Catholic Educational Leadership. I was a graduate of Boston College School of Theology and Ministry. Missed you guys probably by several years.
1 or 2 years for my case, because we just missed each other. Oh, no, not even 1 year. It was almost. You graduated and I started.
Yes. Like 4 months, I guess. We would have shared that space. Originally from the San Francisco Bay Area in California, and now live in Chicago with my husband and my little boy.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. And should mention too, kindred spirits in a number of ways. So actually, I can't speak for everyone in the room, but I know Jeff and I are musicians. We've got 3 Filipinos in the space, right? All sorts of these interconnections in the Ignatian family. So it really is a treat. And for the listener, we're keeping a degree of realism. This is a hotel corridor. You'll hear background noise, but that's part of the spiritual life. And so we continue. Great. So again, thanks for taking some time amidst the hecticness. I mean, you're here representing different entities, including the host institution. I snuck Clarissa away from her table, so thanks. Want to start off with the general kind of prompt and invitation we're relating to this rich spiritual tradition in a lot of ways. What's one gift or grace that it's given you? How has it impacted you? Just like in a nutshell.
So
yeah,
the space here, like just this weekend?
No, in
or
general,
just
like
general,
in your life.
like
yeah.
in my life.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the ways in which it's enriched my life. So before I came to Ignatian Solidarity Network, I was working in an archdiocesan context, and I really wanted to be in solidarity around social justice, and I just found it difficult in the work I was doing. And after kind of like I had, Ignatian training and background at BC, and when I came back into the fold in 2022 and really started to find my people and find people who I could talk about social justice with, but I think even more importantly, as a Filipino American, like I have also been able to connect with other Filipino Americans in like social justice, but also not even just that space, but even just talk about family context, religious education and spaces. And so in a lot of ways coming, into this Jesuit space again, a space that I didn't think I would, necessarily work, not out of desire, but just, what are the availability and the options. And so it's brought relationships, it's brought belonging, and it's also brought just kind of a renewed sense in like where the church could go.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, I'll go next, and just jumping off a little bit of Clarissa. In undergrad, I encountered the Father Aripe quote of like falling in love, staying in love, and deciding and having that decide everything. And for me, I think so much about how vocation and how Ignatian spirituality has sort of shaped and continues to shape my understanding of vocation, and how it's tied even my journey into divinity school, where, what is that Frederick Buechner quote? Where your deep gladness meets the world's deep need. Right?
Yeah.
And so that sense of aligning who you are, what you're passionate about, what you love and being loved, and having that line deeply with the signs of the times, right? And finding just a really natural and authentic alignment between those two things has been life-giving. And again, like similar to what Clarissa shared, being able to be in community with folks who share that same alignment, or like that commitment to living that alignment out.
Love that.
Yeah, and just to jump off of what Clarissa and Michael were just saying, I think for me, I graduated St. Joe's University 2010 and then BCSTM 2014. And then since then, I've really been working outside of, I'd say, Jesuit spaces. I worked for Augustinian school. I'm working for a school sponsored by the Sisters of Mercy right now. I've worked for Catholic Relief Services. And I think for me, the constant has been so many Ignatian pieces of spirituality, but the one that really sticks out as I'm sitting here listening to my colleagues talk is this notion that the whole world, like God is everywhere in the world. And maybe that's not uniquely Ignatian, but Ignatius in his spirituality really made a very important focus on that as he was talking about spirituality and kind of developing the exercises about how we can see God in everyday life. And certainly I think for me in my own personal spirituality, I walk around and I think, growing up in New Jersey, central New Jersey, Diocese of Metuchen, some of the high school youth groups I was part of didn't really have that same sense. And that was how I was formed. And then entering St. Joe's and doing the 19th annotation and really kind of falling in love with Ignatian spirituality, and this notion that, as I'm walking around campus, I can see God in the sunlight. I can see God in the trees. I can see God in the people who I interact with. So I don't have to go to church alone. Like God is everywhere and God is within me. I think that that's a very Ignatian notion that has just persisted across all of the different places that I've done ministry. And I think it continues to resonate with people in those different contexts. If they know who the Sisters of Mercy are, but I'm able to talk about this notion that God is everywhere and God is infused within their desires, that really resonates with them still. And so I think for me that the Ignatian notion of God being part of our everyday life has really just been such a foundational piece of how I live my spirituality and how I share it through my ministry.
Love it. And what's worth mentioning too, especially for our listeners, many of whom will probably be among spiritual seekers and folks who are newer to the Ignatian world, this is one of the, of course, this is true of most spiritual traditions, if not all of them, but in particular, it happens most readily, it sounds like, in the Ignatian world, where people say, that's how I fell in love with God, with Jesus, with the world, with, my calling, etc. But that language is so natural, and it's wild. It's beautiful too. And so, dear listener, we hope you take that to heart, that this is a possible means through which you will fall in love, but also receive the tools to stay in love. And speaking of, we should talk a little bit, I save this usually for the end, but might as well do it now, like here at the Ignatian Family Teaching for Justice. And many of you have shared, like, you've been here before, whether it's primarily a work responsibility or it's just become a rhythm of your life, or it's a little bit of both. I'm actually fairly new to it, all things considered. This is only my second one, but it really is kind of a frame of reference for me for a number of reasons. And this year's theme is pressing on. And so what's one way that Ignatian spirituality can help someone press on? Especially, we think about the life of justice and that call.
I think from my perspective, one thing that's really helpful about Ignatian spirituality is that it takes into account both the consonances and the desolation, the consolation and desolation, of life. So for Ignatius, the spiritual movements of consolation, of when we're feeling really in tune with God and connected with God, and the spirit of desolation, where we're feeling really disconnected from God. Those aren't, one is good and one is bad, or one is the right way and one is the wrong way. They're all just part of being spiritual people. And I think from my perspective, when we're talking about working for justice and this theme of pressing on, there's a lot more times when you're doing social justice work where you experience desolation than you do consolation, at least in my experience. And then when you do experience consolation, it's not the way that you were hoping to feel. And yet, I think what Ignatian spirituality is helpful to do is to look at both of those things, all of those things, and say, well, this is all part of a movement towards something greater, right? The magis. And so whether it is you're seeing something not work out and you're experiencing that desolation, or you're seeing something work out in a positive way and feeling that sense of consolation, you're still moving towards the greater, the thing that God is calling you to do. Because like I said earlier, God is in our desires. And so we desire to do something, we follow that, and it leads us somewhere. And yeah, sure, we're going to have some really great times, but sometimes when things get hard, we can see both of those things as ultimately good, because we're being led closer and closer into a relationship with God.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to try and take a swing at this. I think for me, and I'm going to try to not riff on too much.
Yeah.
I think for
that
me,
was Colleen Dolly walking by. We love her.
Vatican correspondent.
Yeah. This is the Ignatian Family Teaching.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I had this really beautiful privilege to be able to break open the theme this year. And when I think about, or I guess reflect on what Ignatian spirituality is with regards to pressing on, I appreciate the non-staticness of Ignatian spirituality, right? It's like I can seek God if I choose to do so, because I know that God is all around, and I know that I can sort of root myself and ground myself in that.
Yeah.
And whether I want to or not, sometimes, especially in moments of what feels like despair and what feels like challenge and what feels like sorrow, that God is stubborn enough to show up, right? And God is stubborn enough to push past our own stubbornness, and to show glimpses of God's self in our work, right? And I think that is sustaining, to move through the world in that way, to know that even when we're thinking about the work of justice, that there is a limit to what we can do, and that God gets us over that finish line. Right. And presses on with us, behind us, and through us, to get us just a little bit closer.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, that's one of the wild things, right? It's like Ignatius helped us discover that God really does press on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes it a little bit easier for me to imagine that it's possible.
Yeah, even in spite of our own sort of like creatureliness, right? In
Yeah.
spite of our own what feels like shortcomings, God's like, nah, like that's good. I can work with good.
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. How about you, Clarissa?
Do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, no worries, no
Thank
worries. It's how does the spirituality help you press on, or how can it help a person press on?
Yeah, I think the way it helps me press on, and kind of what is such a great reminder, and it's something that kind of led I shared earlier, was just this idea. It's not even this idea. This community in which we like root ourselves, in which we find hope. And what I hear from a lot of people, and I've come about 4 years now, mostly through work. Before I started working at ISN, I'd never been to the teach-in. And it's always such a great reminder of like, people love to come because of connection, because of belonging, because of understanding. And even what we were talking about earlier is like, there are young families that are starting to come, and like we need to bring our kids. And I think it's also this idea of like, justice is intergenerational. And so the work that we have of pressing on, so some of us bring young people, right? And there's that. But then for the families that come, there's the pressing on of just like, hey, I do this, and this is something like I want to share with you. And so the pressing on is like, together as one Ignatian family, like we can come with our different spaces and our different people, and continue to press on as one.
Yeah. I want to add two things. One is just a fun little anecdote. So there's a great family, speaking of intergenerational, great family that walked by, and the kiddos were super cute, and the whole family's really engaged. And so they were actually, the parents were part of an earlier episode from last night. So just like truly Ignatian family. I think the second thing is I'm doing a little media booth, so to speak, at our table for the Office of Ignatian Spirituality, and it was inviting people just to share short messages of like, how do you press on spiritually, or how does this help you press on? And these kids from Brophy Jesuit in Arizona came up, and they were talking about Jesus, and they were talking about the power of the examen that they do every day, and the importance of aligning with the values of Jesus. And it was like, it's not just like, it's nice to see the younger people that I am here. They actually teach me. Right? I was really moved by what they shared, and that's an important experience for everyone, like younger, older, all across, right? That we're all feeding off of each other. And that makes it a really big treat for me to be here. Yeah. Really great stuff. Let's see. I'm wondering, so you're all mission-minded people, and it's very obvious.
God willing.
We try.
Well, the desire for the desire, as you all know, is a key part of being mission-minded. And on the one hand, it's like, it's really great to have people, and important for people who are in ministerial roles, to talk about mission, and we feed off of each other, we guide each other. But I think there's also a need to translate that. We've got lots of friends and colleagues, people that we serve, people who we teach and accompany, who they're going to go on to become doctors, nurses, lawyers, all sorts of other things. And the task will be to encourage and to sow the seeds, and to assist them in finding how God is calling them to also be mission-minded in those spaces. Which then means like, it's a matter of translating this spirituality. Discernment's one of those things, right? For sure. But are there other things you lift up in terms of ways to unlock a sense of mission in whatever it is a person's doing, finding meaning, finding God, right? Pressing on, all of these things. What would that be? Where would you invite like a seeker or someone newer to this?
I would say like, just follow your curiosity. I think in spaces like this, there are so many different ways in which we can like access the intersectionality of justice, in terms of the themes, in terms of like how, and even in terms of like Ignatian spaces, and Ignatius himself was curious, in terms of what he uncovered, discovered. And so I would encourage a spiritual seeker, like, if you have the curiosity, just continue to be curious and don't shut down that question for yourself. And that's a question that might not always be present and might not always arise. But if you have a question, sit with it. Sit with the discomfort of the question, what you might be called to. I won't even use the word God, because perhaps that's not even where you want to go. Right. But just sit with the big question, and I think, and know that that's okay.
Yeah. To follow up, and anyone can take this and then go in the direction you were intending to go. But the curiosity for Ignatius. I mean, I know the answer, or one of the answers, but like, where do you? Well, because I posed the question, but where?
We're all laughing if you cannot hear us, listener, at like, I know the answer, and I'm like, tell me the answer.
No, you know the answer too. So, like, where do you find that Ignatius's life and story? Like, where is that clearest for you? His sense of curiosity, and not only curiosity about like, oh, that's nice, but also like, this troubles me. This is challenging, but I'm gonna keep gnawing at this.
Ooh, the itch.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
and I know, I know you were laughing, but you know the answer too, because I mean, you've talked about discernment. You've talked about, you've already given all the clues.
Yeah. I think. So I guess I'll go with that first, this part, and then I'll try to weave it into the first question. So, when I've talked with folks about, what they're sort of like thinking about with their lives and like their big questions, and they're struggling to sort of find answers, I ask them, you could put that question away. You don't have to answer it today. You don't have to answer it ever. But if it comes up again, and can you sit with yourself if you don't even try to answer that question?
Yeah.
How long can you sit with that before it starts itching again? And how long can you resist trying to scratch that itch? So I guess that there's a yearning, right? And there's a yearning that sort of, again, like refuses to yield until you say yes, or at least like allow yourself to ask that question aloud. And I think there's a lot of courage that it takes to do that. But there's agency too, right? Like ultimately it is our choice whether or not we want to ask and answer those questions.
Yeah.
Because also at its core, and here's the weave, let's see if I land this plane, is that I think we all desire to be seen, known, and loved. Right? We desire to be seen by those who care about us, by our communities. We desire to be known by the communities that we look to serve, and we also deserve to be loved by those around us and the people that are dear in our lives and the things that we care about. So how we do that, right, like in the ways that we practice and live those out, maybe it comes in an itching question or something that's yearning. And again, like, if you choose not to do anything with it, fair. But how long can you sort of like resist that urge?
Yeah.
That seems to be the question.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, this is you talking, Michael, and it's just reminding me of so many experiences with my college students who, just thinking about stuff, maybe they are Catholic or maybe they're not Catholic, but they're asking me about these big things in their lives. And I'm noticing it looks like the keynote is over. So things might get a little louder.
That's okay.
Do my best.
Not a problem.
Project.
Yeah. I'm very good at that. So when I talk to my college students, so much of their formation has been so centered on this notion that there is a plan and I'm on God's plan. And the plan is linear, and that's point A to point B. And I have this vision. And as long as I stay close to the plan, it's there. And what I like to share with them is this kind of thing that I've been noodling over ever since I saw this movie. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Oh, man. So one of the major plot points, it's about, it's kind of dipping into the multiverse, this thing. And one of the major plot points is that
don't worry about it.
Michelle Yeoh's character develops this machine that will essentially help people jump from one universe to another universe.
Yeah.
And so the whole movie, it's this thing where she's jumped from different universes. It gets a little silly. It's really, really poignant. But what I show students is I open up my whiteboard it's in a case, and I open it up and I'm like, you think God's plan is from point A to point B, or even maybe like disjointed, but really God can meet you in any point on this scatter plot that exists. And it isn't as if you choose one thing that might feel wrong in the moment, God isn't going to meet you in that quote unquote wrong choice. And to me, it's reflective of what Ignatius calls the discernment of two goods. Right. The choices that we make, the things that we do, those desires, those curiosities, it isn't ever really something that is a right answer or a wrong answer. To your point about belonging, I think sometimes when I work with college students, they're so interested in something, but they're like, but what will my parents think? What are my friends going to think? Will I not belong anymore because I make this decision? And what I say to them, like, listen, it isn't like from God's perspective, you make this wrong answer, God's going to be like, well, sorry, I'm not going to be there with you. It's God is there going to be there with you regardless of what you choose. So just make the choice. Just step into the choice and see if it works out. Now, obviously there's like limits to that, but I think for me, when I think about I think the capacity for that type of spirituality is something that only Ignatian spirituality could give me the language to have, because I feel like it's really expansive in that way.
Yeah, it's it reminds me of the Alicia Keys song, right? Some people want it all, but I don't got nothing at all. Thank you. And it really is like, because I remember doing a Charis retreat, which is part of our inventory at OIS, and it was spirit at work, right? Ignatian discernment, finding God's plan for your life, and we did use that language initially, and it was so funny. Like, the more I meditated on, like, we as a team, the more we meditated on the sources of it, which is the life of Ignatius, the rules for discernment of spirits, and so on. It was very clear that what Ignatius wanted us to see is that it's about the relationship first. And then once you've got that, then the decisions, you can roll with the decisions and make the best possible decisions and then adapt from there and trust that like nothing's necessarily wasted with God. And for me, that was very freeing. And for a lot of folks, I think that was very freeing, but there were tension points for a number of people on the retreat where it's like, but I thought it's just one thing, that it's linear. On another side of it, I had a recent experience, and I think I share this in another episode, so indulge me, future listeners, but I happened to direct a retreat at a great retreat house in Long Island, and I was like the youngest person on this retreat by at least 20 years. And I wanted to have everyone do a life graph as a window into kind of the idea of a graced history. And no one had done that before, or maybe one person had done it before. And so they went off and they came back and I said, how'd it go? And again, I'm the youngest by a lot in this space. And someone made a joke. It looked like a bad EKG.
Jeremy Baramy.
And yet amidst that, this participant was able to say, but I could see God in all of it. Right? And that was just like wild, truly wild. And I think that for me, it's freeing, right? And my life hasn't been linear, and neither was Ignatius's too. And I think most of our spiritual heroes, in fact, it's very nonlinear. Yeah. So beautiful stuff.
Yeah, I love that. I always find it sort of, sorry, I have to remember to keep talking into this a bit.
Yeah.
How much hindsight gives us clarity. I guess the challenge then is sort of, and I think Ignatian spirituality helps with this, is like how to sort of reorient ourselves to recognizing that in the moment and in the present too. Right? I'm making the 19th annotation this year too.
Oh yeah.
And
so great.
Are you still stuck in the first week?
I am. But I think your point about relationship being at the core of this, like I've tried to do it 3 times. So this is maybe my 3rd time, and this is so far the most steady. And the first 2 times I always got stuck on Psalm 139.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Always.
What does that say? What does that say?
Oh, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I know your works, and you have made them very well. And that part in particular, right? And I think I understand where, I guess now, like why that has been such a brick wall, right? The sense of like, no, like I am good, not perfect, right? But I am good, and that means I am still being formed. I am, like, the story is not over yet. Nothing is sort of finished yet, and that revelation has made it more freeing. And I think it also has helped me to sort of relate with different folks in my life, to be like, no, you're not finished yet. Like, you still got some surprises waiting for you too, and don't you want to be surprised? Like, wouldn't it be nice to see what happens next? Anyway, that just, that popped up a little bit as we were speaking.
It's beautiful.
I wanted to, in sharing your piece about Psalm 139, I wanted to kind of share something about surprises and like what popped up literally. So I wrote a book a couple years ago about pregnancy and what it was like to kind of pray with scripture through pregnancy, like through like I've got one child through my son AJ's like birth. And in terms of surprise, my husband wanted to find out the gender of the child, and I did not, because I wanted that surprise. Because I'm like, like, God surprises me every day, all the time, but I wanted that big surprise, right? And so when I think of the connection, I mean, we often think of like Ignatius's cannonball, like we joke about it at ISM, the cannonball moment, right? The reveal. And so I think for me, like the biggest surprise was like being like expecting a child and be like, I don't want to know. Like, we're gonna have names either way, and like, well, it'll be fine. But I think it was just like waiting and kind of like knowing that like I could know, I could find out, or I could just be like bad. And to the doctors and nurses' credit, like they did a fantastic job of like hiding that info. Like they knew I was like, very clear, but also just to allow myself. And so when I think of Psalm 139, I think about that moment of just like, you knew me, but also like you knew like all these different things and like what would surprise me and like how it would surprise me.
I can't hide from you.
You
I
can't.
got no option.
I love 139.
Well, and this is reminding me of the prayer by Teilhard de Chardin at the end. It's at the end of it, I'm trying to remember it. I might have to paraphrase it, but give God the benefit of the doubt, essentially. Like let God believe that he's creating this with you. Right. And I'm having a hard time remembering the name of that because it's the first line.
Trust in the slow work.
Slow work. That's it. And I think that some of it is, can we allow ourselves to be surprised by how God is in our lives, whether we recognize it or not. And I think just to tie back to the top of this, which is, so how does this apply to non-minister people? I think sometimes I've never worked in a corporate job, so I don't even know if KPIs are a real thing. But like if you have like your projects or your KPI, or if you're a doctor or you're a nurse, and or really like working in a corporate setting, and you're just finding yourself run down, I think we have to remember that life isn't about the productivity. It's about the journey, right? It's about the ways in which we are feeling ourselves as fully human and recognizing that in our humanity, God is also present. And you don't need to be a campus minister or a priest or a nun or somebody who's interested in the spirituality of St. Ignatius of Loyola to recognize yourself as being human in a moment. That could be on the floor, that could be in the hospital room, that can be in the courtroom, that can be in the corporate office. If you just find yourself in a moment standing 2 feet flat on the floor, sitting 2 feet flat on the floor, and you say to yourself, I am so glad that I am here, and I'm so glad that we are here, then you've done it, right? Then you've really tapped into what I think Ignatius is inviting everybody to do.
I think one of the things that came to mind as you were speaking to, Jeff, and also in response to all of you, is it comes back to Clarissa's idea of curiosity. And one of the ways that has come back to me was, I think it wasn't the exercises themselves, but it was definitely an Ignatian retreat after I'd done the spiritual exercises, where I remembered something really important about who I was when I was like 12 or 11, whatever age I was in 5th grade, where during free time, the two things that I was really good at in free time was like playing sports relative to, not that it was NBA quality or what have you, but I was pretty good on the field during recess. But I would also read the encyclopedias during free time.
Awesome.
And I loved it. And I remember
That feels very you.
It feels very, yeah. And in retrospect, it was like, that absolutely is me. And I'm grateful that I followed that curiosity and let it win over down the road, because it was like, I distinctly remember discovering, I think it's pronounced hama hama nuka uapua. It's like a fish that's kind of a tropical fish. And you can imagine by the name, it's in the Pacific. And I was like, this is like the longest word I've ever seen. And it's such a name that I've not seen before, so I'm going to memorize it. And it brought me so much joy, right? And so I think learning via Ignatian spirituality that curiosity is a clue makes it easier for me to kind of follow along down the road. And actually one of the spaces where it seems like that curiosity, and it's not about the numbers, but I'm having a lot of fun doing these podcasts. I'm having a freaking blast. It's really spiritual. It's really great. It's wonderful to hear things from people. And it started with a curiosity. It's like, I wonder what that would be like. And then following the curiosity of, well, I like listening to people, so why not? So it's just really amazing. Speaking of, so I know we've got a lot of other things going on with IFTJ. You've got family, you've got kids, you've got metaphorical kids, right? Your students and stuff. So as a closing prompt and invitation, if I invite folks to go around the horn, who's a hero for you in terms of spirituality and justice? And it doesn't have to be an Ignatian person, doesn't have to even be a Christian person, but living, dead, Christian or not, Ignatian or not, who's a hero for you? That's when you know it's a deep question.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, repeat the question one more time.
Who's a hero for you in spirituality and justice? Any tradition.
Living or dead.
Living or dead, any tradition.
I can go because I always come back to Monsignor Oscar Romero for me,
Yes.
Saint Oscar Romero. And I know that might be like the super cliche answer in particular circles, like, oh, Oscar Romero, of course. But I just think he is certainly, over the course of the last 40 years, he's such an example of what happens when you take a faith that you've lived all your life seriously in the midst of conflict and in the midst of injustice. I mean, they empowered him to be Archbishop of San Salvador, thinking that he would just be a yes man to the government. And when he really heard and saw what was happening to the Salvadoran people in his role, and he realized he had this big platform, this radio time that he can just speak.
Yeah.
He took it and he just started talking to the poor, and he just started being the person who God had intended him to be. So much so that, at this conference, we remember the Jesuit martyrs, and he was one of the first, well, not the first martyr of the Salvadoran Civil War, because there are many unnamed people who were that.
Right.
But, in the middle of mass to be assassinated by the SOA trained people, for me, for my whole faith development, that has been such a touchstone of his story and the way in which he witnessed to not just his faith, but his faith through working with and for other people. Like that for me has always been something I've strived to do as a person of faith.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll necessarily be a martyr, but I think trying to live in that sense of freedom, right? Liberation of like, I'm going to put myself on the line for the people who I care about most, and especially for people who are pushed outside of the margins. I mean, I think that's something that I really always strive to do and have always tried to strive to do in my life. Obviously I fall short, but
the itch was real, right? He listened to that itch.
Gosh, I'm between a few folks, but I'm going to stick with one. I'm going to say Howard Thurman for me.
Yeah.
I think because I appreciated just how
deep is the hunger. And I think how he thinks about stewardship in the ways of like justice have been something that's really been important to me, right? He has this, I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, but he says, right, like, I've been picking fruit from trees by people who I've never met all my life.
right? Like, and who am I to like not plant seeds for others? And if I don't like, if I don't think that those trees will yield fruit, like, what little faith do I have, right, in those trees, right? And just that sense of like, no, I am an inheritor and part of a tradition,
Amazing,
that has long outlasted me. And it's not so much about, right? It is not so much about the fruit itself, or seeing the fruit or being able to pick it, but to do my work or to be part of that work of gardening, right, and planting seeds, and just sort of knowing and hoping that somebody else will be able to pick them too, right? So there's a sense of like, I got like 15 minutes in the history of creation to do something, and what could happen after those 15 minutes? It's not necessarily up to me, but I do so with hope, right? I do so with hope that something's going to yield, and that somebody's going to pick something out of it, and that if I do it right and faithfully, that other folks will be inspired to do the same, quietly, loudly, authentically, whatever that looks like. So yeah, I'm gonna go with their one.
Beautiful. Last but not least, last call.
Please repeat the question. There's some people walking. Maybe I'm a little distracted. Please repeat the question.
No worries. The spirituality hero, spirituality and justice. Any tradition, living or dead?
The person who I'm connected to in some way is Sister Thea Bowman.
Oh yeah.
She just had such a wonderful, like, disarming presence in a lot of ways, in talking a lot about the needs of the Black Catholic Church and Black Catholics in general. And her way in which she like woven liturgy and authenticity into who she was, like, was really inspiring. And I only really came to know her in the last several years and really know of her story, and even perhaps want to champion her cause, like, on the road to sainthood. But I think for me, like, so I started to worship at a Black Catholic church probably about 2 years ago now. And in that, what's really odd, perhaps, is like I've become more attached to who I am as a Filipina American, but also really thinking a lot about the role of anti-Blackness and the role of like Black and Asian solidarity. And so I think for me, like, she really inspires me as someone who's like not afraid to literally stand up and tell her truth, but also bring people in. And she was artistic, and she was creative, and she was, not afraid to show up when she wasn't whole. She was sick, toward the end of her life. And like, she didn't hide that. She wasn't ashamed of that. She brought that truth. And I think a lot of times, when we look at sickness and frailty, it's like there's a shame, perhaps, like, oh, I can't, or I'm not willing, or I'm not able, or you can't see me if I'm whole. But she was whole as who she was, and she brought that, and she was like, so transformative really is the word that I think about.
I love it. This has been so rich, and so many wonderful insights and stories and experiences. So thank you for joining. Thank you for your patience in this really hectic little corridor during the Ignatian family teach-in. I mean, I feel at home, but I know it is tough because there's a lot of moving parts. Special thanks to our guests, Clarissa Aljentera, Director of Education for Justice, Ignatian Solidarity Network, Michael Libunao-Macalintal, Director of Campus Ministry, Regis High School, and Jeffrey Echenique Wallace, Director of Spirituality and Justice, Gwynedd Mercy University. To learn more about the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice and the fine work of the Ignatian Solidarity Network, visit ignatiansolidarity.net. And you can always find lots of information from OIS about Ignatian spirituality at ignatian.info. Thanks for listening. Wishing you grace today on your Ignatian way. Ignatian Pathways is hosted by me, Dr. Dave De La Fuente, and produced and presented by the Office of Ignatian Spirituality, a ministry of the USA East Province of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits.